Peter Lovelock, Director of TRPC, thank you for coming into Herbert Smith Freehills to talk to us about AI. How do you think we need to get the balance right between allowing AI to develop and managing any risks associated with AI?
So I think the starting point needs to be one of society and leadership working out what the objectives are. Objectives drive behaviour. I think starting from a regulatory point means that you're going to start regulating when you're not quite sure what it is that there is to regulate yet. The thing that we know about AI is what we don't know. And what we do know about AI is largely defined by machine learning. We know bits and pieces of deep learning, we know bits and pieces of where we're going with artificial intelligence, but most of what we've got set so far is around machine learning. And so we've got frameworks around machine learning that can begin to be adapted. I think when we recognise just how early in the journey we are, we need to be setting some statements around what we hope for the benefits and what we hope to achieve for society. And as we begin to learn them, those frameworks can come in a little bit more solidly.
So do you think, you mentioned regulation, do you think it's too early then for governments and regulators to kind of grapple with this? Do you think there's a big role for them to play in AI? Or as you say, is it sort of a little bit early stage at this point?
So I think it's a good question. I think that there is a role for regulators and policymakers and government as well as society to be playing. I think we ought to walk into this conversation fully cognizant of getting the regulators involved. But I think I take it a very big step further. I think we ought to be using this opportunity now to reset our regulatory model. One of the things we've learned from this data-driven and digital disruption journey we're on is that the siloed approach of regulatory modelling is failing us. It's not fit for purpose anymore. And AI is only going to exacerbate the cross-sectoral, cross-jurisdictional pressures we're under extremely. And so beginning to reset around some of the success models we've seen, sandboxing, for example, black box developing, whereby we're trying to take more of an adaptive approach to regulatory setting. This is going to be crucial for AI. We want to be having the regulators learn with developers, with industry, with society as it's getting implemented. The qualifier I would throw in there, I think where we're going to learn how to put our frameworks in place is to begin around specific sectors, recognising that we need to have those cross-sectoral conversations happening as part of that regulatory frameworking. And then we need to be doing adaptive regulatory setting as we go. It needs to be far more enabling rather than risk managing.
What do you think the chances are of industry being able to self-regulate, or do you think ultimately government or regulators will have to play an important role?
So we've got a mixed bag, as we both know, in terms of how self-regulation's played out. Again, we don't dismiss self-regulation, but I think what we're seeing a movement towards, both in countries like the UK and the US, what we've seen from examples in Australia are codes of conduct, but codes of conduct that have aspects that take us a step further. Codes of conduct that make sure that we include transparency, that have accountability built into them. So we need codes of conduct or self-regulation, by which, joint regulation if you will, co-regulation, that also have penalties coming in. So there is a regulatory overlay, there's an oversight mechanism. I think what everyone is getting very conscious of is the responsibility piece is missing from the whole conversation, that needs to come back in, and it can't come through simple legislation or regulation. A, they're too slow, and B, it sort of absolves us from the responsibility. The individuals go out of that picture, and so it becomes a liability question. And what we're trying to do is bring the human-centred component back into the whole conversation.
You mentioned the UK. We've seen bodies like in the UK, the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation, being established. Do you think those sorts of bodies are important for this kind of conversation around AI between government, industry, individuals, would you say?
So you're a lawyer, let me give you the economist answer, yes and no. Yes and no to Centre for Ethics type institutions. Yes, in that we need institutions like that are able to bring people together, that have the convening platform and have some weight in the conversations that they start. And so the consultation papers we see coming out, these are an important way to drive the conversation and the developments. However, as we've seen through the conversations that are proliferating around Asia, around AI right now, for these to be successful, we need some political will being exhibited from the top down. So yes to those kind of centres, but we also need government or leadership coming in a way that gives those centres some empowerment so that what comes out of them has some force, has some accountability, has some responsibility. That transparency, accountability loop has to be built into the development.
Peter, thanks again to you and to TRPC.
Thank you.